The city was alive that Friday night. Neon lights reflected in puddles on the sidewalk, laughter echoing from rooftop bars, and music spilling out of every corner. But for Isabella, the world felt muted. She stood at the edge of the crowded club terrace, her champagne glass trembling in her hand as she watched her ex-boyfriend, Daniel, laugh with another woman. He leaned in close, whispering into her ear, his hand resting possessively on her back. That should have been Isabella. That used to be Isabella. Her chest tightened with humiliation, the sting of betrayal still fresh. She thought coming here would prove she was over him. Instead, it only reminded her how easily he had moved on. Her best friend nudged her. "You need to do something, Bella. Don't let him think he won." Something reckless surged inside her, half anger, half heartbreak. And then she saw him. A stranger. Tall, commanding, dressed in a tailored black suit that didn't belong in this casual crowd. He leaned against the bar with an effortless arrogance, dark eyes scanning the room like he owned it. His shirt collar was undone, revealing a gold chain against his chest. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the noise around her vanished. Before she could talk herself out of it, Isabella set her glass down, straightened her shoulders, and marched toward him. Daniel's laughter echoed behind her, fueling her boldness. The stranger raised an eyebrow as she stopped in front of him, and then, without a word, Isabella leaned up, grabbed his collar, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was fire and steel. Heat surged through her veins, her heart pounding against her ribs. She expected him to pull away, to be shocked, maybe even offended. But instead, his strong hand slid to her waist, holding her firmly as he deepened the kiss. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel froze mid-laugh, his jaw dropping. Isabella pulled back, breathless, her cheeks flushed with both victory and shame. The stranger's lips curved into the faintest, most dangerous smile. His voice was low, velvety, laced with authority. "Interesting choice, Bella," he murmured. "Do you even know who I am?" Her pulse faltered. No, she didn't know. Not yet, but she was about to find out. The kiss still lingered on Isabella's lips, but now the weight of reality pressed in. People stared, whispers cutting through the music like knives. Daniel's face burned with shock and rage, his arms slipping from the other woman as his eyes locked onto Isabella. Good, she thought bitterly. Let him feel even a fraction of the humiliation he had caused her. But when Isabella turned back to the stranger, the heat of her triumph faded. He was watching her intently, not like a man flattered by a stolen kiss, but like a predator analyzing prey. His dark eyes narrowed slightly, his lips curling into that faint, dangerous smile. "Bold," he said softly, his accent sharp and smooth. European, but she couldn't place it. His hand still rested on her waist, firm, commanding, but dangerous. She swallowed, pulling back a little, suddenly aware of how easily he could hold her there if he wanted. I just needed to prove a point," Isabella whispered, her bravado slipping under his gaze. The stranger leaned in, close enough that his breath brushed against her ear. "You should be careful who you use for games, Bella. Sometimes the devil himself answers the call." A chill raced down her spine. She stepped back, but his eyes followed her like a shadow. Daniel was storming toward them now, his jaw clenched, his fists tight. "Isabella, what the hell are you doing?" Daniel snapped, his voice raised enough to draw more attention. The crowd shifted, hungry for the drama. The stranger didn't move. He simply straightened his jacket, exuding calm, effortless authority. When Daniel reached for Isabella's arm, the man's hand shot out with lightning precision, gripping Daniel's wrist in an iron hold. "Careful," the stranger murmured, his tone deceptively calm. "You don't touch what doesn't belong to you." Daniel winced, trying to yank his arm back. "Who the hell do you think you are?" The stranger's eyes darkened. "Someone you're not ready to meet." With that, he released Daniel, letting him stumble back. The crowd buzzed with shocked murmurs, phones lifted to capture the confrontation. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. Who was this man, and what had she just gotten herself into? The stranger's gaze softened for just a moment, But it wasn't kindness. It was possession. He leaned in one last time, his voice low and certain. "We'll meet again, Bella. And next time it won't be your choice." He turned and walked away, the crowd parting for him like he was royalty, or something far more dangerous. Isabella stood frozen, her heart racing. She had wanted to make Daniel jealous. Instead, she had caught the attention of a man whose world she didn't understand, a man she now couldn't escape. The music roared back to life, the crowd dispersing into whispers and stolen glances. Isabella's pulse was still racing, her lips tingling from the kiss, but her mind was spinning with unease. Daniel glared at her, his pride wounded, his voice low and venomous. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" "Do you?" she shot back, surprising even herself with her sharpness. She had wanted to wound him, and it worked. But the cost of that impulsive kiss now weighed heavily. Daniel scrubbed a hand over his face. "You're insane, Isabella. You don't even know who that man is." The edge in his tone caught her off guard. "What are you talking about?" Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice. "That's Adrian Moretti." The name fell heavy between them, like a gunshot muffled by the music. Isabella blinked, confusion furrowing her brow. "And I'm supposed to know who that is?" Daniel scoffed, incredulous. "Are you serious? He's not some random guy. He's dangerous. He runs things in this city. Things people don't even talk about. Mafia, Isabella. He's a mafia boss." The words clawed at her chest, each one sinking deeper. Mafia boss. It sounded unreal, like something out of a movie, but the way Daniel's face paled, the tension in his voice, it was all too real. Her lips parted, a nervous laugh slipping out. "You're exaggerating. That's ridiculous." But even as she said it, she remembered the man's grip on Daniel's wrist, effortless, unflinching. The way the crowd parted for him, the way his eyes pierced through her like he already owned her. Daniel shook his head. "You've got no idea what you've started." Panic stirred inside her. She glanced toward the exit, half expecting to see him still there, watching. But Adrian Moretti was gone, slipped into the shadows as silently as he had appeared. Her best friend rushed to her side, eyes wide with gossip-fueled excitement. "Bella, what the hell was that?" "Who was he? That was... wow." Isabella forced a shaky smile, brushing her hair back. "Just someone I shouldn't have kissed." But inside, her heart whispered a truth she wasn't ready to admit. That kiss had awakened something. And now, she wasn't sure if she'd ever escape the consequences. Somewhere in the night, Adrian Moretti was already thinking about her. And for a man like him, thinking always led to claiming. Morning light spilled through Isabella's apartment blinds, painting streaks across her unmade bed. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the press of his lips, the steel of his hand at her waist, the dangerous glint in his eyes. Adrian Moretti. The name pulsed in her mind like a curse. She had Googled it at 3 a.m., her heart in her throat. Most of what she found was rumors, whispers of illegal dealings, nightclub ownerships, connections to politicians, even stories of people who had crossed him and simply vanished. But there were no photos, no details, just fragments of a shadowy empire. She told herself she would forget it, that it was just a reckless night, a mistake she'd bury and move on from, until she stepped out of her apartment that morning. Parked across the street was a sleek black car. Its tinted windows reflected the gray sky, its engine quietly idling. Isabella froze, her keys tightening in her fist. Coincidence, she told herself. Just a car, nothing more. But when she walked toward the bus stop, she felt it. The weight of unseen eyes following her every step. At work, it got worse. She caught a glimpse of the same car circling the block near her office. Later, when she went out for lunch, she found a single white rose lying on the bench where she usually sat. Her chest tightened. She picked it up, staring at the delicate petals. Tied to the stem was a card, blank except for one word written in elegant ink. Bella. Her breath hitched. No one called her that, not even Daniel. Isabella dropped the rose into the trash, her hands trembling. But deep down, she knew. This was no accident. That night, as she locked up her apartment, she heard it. A low voice drifting from the shadows at the end of the hallway. "Did you think I wouldn't find you?" Her heart stopped. Adrian Moretti stepped forward, the dim light catching his sharp features. The same black suit, the same controlled power in every movement. He leaned casually against the wall, as if he belonged there, as if the world bent to his presence. "You ran from me, Bella," he said softly, almost amused. "But you'll learn. I don't like being forgotten." Her breath caught in her chest, fear, and something darker swirling inside her. Because in that moment, she knew the truth. Adrian Moretti wasn't a memory. He was a shadow that had already claimed her, and shadows don't let go. Isabella's heart raced as Adrian's presence filled the narrow hallway. The hum of the city outside seemed to fade, leaving only the echo of his words. She forced herself to speak, though her voice trembled. You can't just follow me." His lips curved in that faint, dangerous smile. "Follow you?" His tone was silky, mocking. "No, Bella. I don't follow. I decide where to be." Her throat went dry. She hated the way his confidence unsettled her. How every word felt like both a threat and a promise. "I don't want trouble," she whispered. Adrian tilted his head, studying her like a puzzle only he could solve. "Trouble?" His voice dipped lower, intimate, as if sharing a secret. "You kissed me. That wasn't trouble. That was fate." Her stomach twisted. She opened her mouth to argue, but he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black envelope. Sleek, heavy, stamped with a crest she didn't recognize. He held it out to her. "Come tonight." She didn't take it. "Come where?" His smile widened just enough to make her uneasy. "You'll see." When she still hesitated, he stepped closer, closing the distance until she could feel the warmth radiating off him. His cologne, rich, dark, intoxicating, tangled with her breath. "I don't ask twice, Isabella." Her name on his lips sounded like both a caress and a command. Slowly, with a trembling hand, she took the envelope. His fingers brushed hers deliberately, sparking a shiver down her spine. He leaned close, his lips grazing her ear. "Don't be late." And then just as quickly as he appeared, he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall, leaving her clutching the envelope like it was a ticking bomb. Inside her apartment, Isabella tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a single, elegantly printed card, dinner. La Rosa, 8 p.m., La Rosa. She'd heard of it. The most exclusive restaurant in the city. A place you couldn't get into even with months of reservations, unless you were rich, powerful, or untouchable. Isabella stared at the card, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. She should throw it away. She should stay home, lock her doors, and pretend none of this was happening. But part of her, the part still haunted by the heat of that kiss, burned with curiosity. And curiosity was dangerous. Because in Adrian Moretti's world, an invitation wasn't a request. It was the first step into his kingdom. The evening air was cool as Isabella stood in front of La Rosa, her stomach twisting into knots. The restaurant glowed with golden light, its grand entrance guarded by doormen in sleek black suits. Luxury cars lined the street, and every person who walked inside carried themselves with the kind of wealth and power that didn't belong to her world. She shouldn't be here. She knew it, but she also knew one thing more dangerous than showing up tonight. Not showing up at all. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she entered. The air smelled of roses and fine wine. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. A live quartet played in the corner, their music drifting through the hushed atmosphere. Eyes followed her as the maître d' approached. "Miss Isabella?" he asked, as though he had been expecting her. Her breath caught. She only nodded, "Right this way." He led her past tables of politicians, socialites, and business tycoons, all whispering, all stealing glances at her. It wasn't until they reached the private back section that she saw him. Adrian Moretti. Seated at a corner table draped in red silk, he looked every bit the king of this hidden empire. Black suit, crisp white shirt unbuttoned just enough, a gold watch gleaming at his wrist. He swirled a glass of red wine, his gaze lifting the moment she appeared, and when his eyes locked on hers, The room seemed to fall away. He rose smoothly, pulling out a chair for her. The gesture was polite, almost gentlemanly, but the intensity in his stare reminded her it was no simple courtesy. "Bella," he murmured, his voice like velvet over steel. "You came," she sat, her hands trembling in her lap. "I didn't think I had a choice." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "You always have a choice. The question is whether you'll make the right one." Dinner unfolded with unnerving elegance. The finest food, the richest wine, waiters who seemed to know Adrian's every preference before he spoke. He didn't talk about himself, not directly, but his presence filled every corner of the conversation, his power woven into every casual glance, every subtle command. At one point, Isabella mustered the courage to ask, "Why me?" "Why all of this?" Adrian leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because you kissed me, Bella. And in my world that means something. You don't start a fire and walk away from the flames." Her chest tightened. It was a mistake. His smile deepened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, it was the only truth you've allowed yourself in a long time." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. She wanted to deny it, to stand up and leave. But the truth was, some part of her couldn't look away. And then, as dessert arrived, Adrian's voice dropped lower, colder. "You should understand, Isabella. Once you step into my world, there's no going back." Her breath caught, because the way he said it. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. The night air clung to her skin as Isabella stepped out of La Rosa, her heels clicking against the stone walkway. The city buzzed with its usual rhythm, but for her, the world felt changed, heavier, darker, and intoxicatingly alive. Behind her, the restaurant door swung open. Adrian emerged, his suit jacket draped casually over his shoulder, the glint of his gold chain catching the light. His stride was unhurried, his gaze fixed on her as if she were the only soul that mattered. She quickened her pace, clutching her purse. "You don't have to walk me," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Don't I?" His tone was smooth, laced with amusement. "You think I'd let you disappear into the night after what just happened?" Her breath caught. It was just dinner. He stopped beside her, tilting his head, his expression sharp. "No, Bella. It was a beginning." The way he said it, final, certain, sent shivers down her spine. They reached the curb, where a sleek black car waited. A driver stepped out, opening the back door without a word. Adrian gestured toward it. She shook her head. "No, I'll take a cab." His eyes narrowed slightly, though his smile remained. "Isabella, no one denies me twice in one night." The warning in his voice was subtle, but undeniable. Against her better judgment, she slid into the car, her heart pounding. Adrian followed, his presence filling the confined space like smoke. As the city blurred past the tinted windows, silence stretched between them. Isabella could feel the heat radiating from him, her own body betraying her with a restless energy she couldn't explain. Finally, he spoke. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Her throat tightened. "What?" "Fire." His gaze lingered on her lips, then her eyes. "You hide it under control, under doubt. But the fire is there. You showed me when you kissed me." She swallowed hard, fighting the pull of his words. "You're twisting this. It was a mistake." He leaned closer, his voice low, dangerous, intimate. "Mistakes don't feel like that, Bella. Tell me. Did you feel nothing when I kissed you back?" Her breath hitched. She wanted to deny it, to insist she felt nothing but regret. But her silence betrayed her. His hand lifted, just brushing against her chin, tilting her face toward him. The electricity between them was undeniable, crackling in the charged air. For a heartbeat, she thought he would kiss her again. A part of her, the part she didn't want to admit existed, wanted him to. But instead, Adrian pulled back, his eyes dark with certainty. "You belong to this fire, Isabella. Whether you accept it now or later doesn't matter. The flames always consume." The car slowed to a stop outside her apartment. Adrian leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. "Sweet dreams, Bella. Dream of me." And then, just like that, he was gone, leaving her trembling in the shadows of her own door. torn between terror and an attraction she couldn't explain. The morning sun streamed weakly through Isabella's curtains, though it did little to clear the storm in her mind. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt Adrian's breath against her skin, heard his voice whispering, "Dream of me." She shook the thought away, pacing her small apartment. This is insane. He's dangerous. I can't get involved. But before she could calm her racing thoughts, a sharp knock rattled her door. Her pulse quickened. For a fleeting second, she thought it might be Adrian. Bold, uninvited, inescapable. But when she opened the door, her heart dropped. Daniel, her ex-boyfriend, stood there, the one man she thought she'd left behind months ago. His hazel eyes searched hers, guilt written across his face. He looked the same messy brown hair, the same leather jacket he always wore when he wanted to look tough. "Bella," he breathed, using the nickname that once melted her heart. "I had to see you." She stiffened. "Why now? After everything? I made a mistake. I let you walk away, but I can't." His voice cracked as he reached for her hand. "I can't lose you. Not to someone else." Her chest tightened. Not to someone else? Did he already know? "Daniel, don't," she whispered, pulling her hand back. "You don't know what you're talking about." But before she could say more, a sleek black car pulled up across the street. Isabella's blood ran cold. The tinted window rolled down just enough for her to see Adrian's eyes. Sharp, unreadable, watching. Daniel noticed too. "Who the hell is that?" She panicked, stepping between Daniel and the street. "No one, just go, please. This isn't the time." But Daniel was never one to back down from a challenge. He leaned to the side, catching sight of Adrian's car. "Is that him? Is that who you're with now?" His voice rose, bitter and jealous. The car door opened. Adrian stepped out slowly, deliberate like a king entering his throne room. His tailored suit caught the morning light, his presence so commanding it made Daniel look small, like a boy trying to play a man's game. Adrian's gaze swept over Daniel, then returned to Isabella. "Is this the past you told me was over?" His voice was calm, but underneath was steel. Isabella's throat closed. She hadn't told Adrian anything about Daniel, and yet, somehow he already knew. Daniel bristled. "Who the hell do you think you are, pulling up like you own the place?" Adrian's lips curved into a cold smile. "Who I am is none of your concern. What matters is her, and you, ragazzo." He looked Daniel up and down dismissively. "You don't belong in her world anymore." The tension thickened, sharp as broken glass. Daniel clenched his fists, ready for a fight. Isabella's heart raced. Two men, both claiming her in different ways, both dangerous in their own right. She stepped forward, her voice desperate. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping." Adrian's eyes flickered to her, softer now. "I'll give you time, Bella, but don't mistake time for freedom. You already know where you belong." With that, he returned to his car, leaving Daniel seething on the sidewalk, and Isabella caught between the ghosts of her past and the fire of her present. Her world was unraveling, and deep down, she knew it was only the beginning. That night, Isabella sat curled on her couch, staring at the flickering light of a candle she hadn't meant to light. Her phone buzzed on the table, but she didn't move. She knew who it was. Adrian. For the past 2 hours, he'd sent nothing but silence. The kind of silence that wrapped around her neck like velvet, reminding her he was never far. She thought she wanted peace, space, but the quiet only made her restless. Finally, the phone rang. Her heart leapt as she picked it up. She didn't speak, just pressed it to her ear. His voice came through, low and deliberate. "You're still awake." It wasn't a question, she swallowed. "How did you know?" A soft chuckle. "Because I'm awake too. Thinking of you." Her breath caught. "Adrian, you don't have to explain." His tone shifted, more commanding now. "You're coming with me tomorrow. 8 o'clock. No excuses." Her pulse raced. "Coming where?" There was a pause, like he wanted her to feel the weight of his words. "To my world." She gripped the phone tighter. "Adrian, I can't just—" "You can," he interrupted smoothly. "And you will. I won't let you hide behind old ghosts, Bella. Not that boy who still thinks he owns you. Not your fear, not even yourself." Her eyes stung with frustrated tears. "Why me? You don't even know me," sounds. Then softly, almost vulnerable, "I know enough. Enough to understand that one kiss was real, and I don't let go of real." The line went quiet for a moment, and she thought he'd hung up, but then his voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "Don't make me send for you. Because if I do, Bella, you'll see just how far I go when I want something." The call ended. Isabella sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her body trembled, torn between fear and the burning pull that refused to let her go. The next evening at exactly 8, a sleek black car waited outside her building. 2 men in sharp suits stood by the doors, their expressions unreadable. Isabella's breath caught as one of them opened the car door with a small bow. "Signor Moretti is expecting you." Her legs moved before her mind could stop them. She slid into the leather seat, heart hammering, and there he was. Adrian, waiting like a king in his throne. His eyes lit up the second they met hers. "Good girl," he murmured, reaching out to brush his fingers against her hand. "Welcome to my world." The city lights blurred outside the tinted glass as the car pulled away, carrying her deeper into a life she had no escape from. The car glided through the city like a shadow, sleek and silent. Isabella pressed her palms against her knees, fighting the urge to bolt, to demand they turn around. But every time she glanced at Adrian, calm, collected, his presence overwhelming, she couldn't move. Finally, the car slowed before an imposing iron gate. It creaked open at the sight of Adrian's car, revealing a sprawling mansion bathed in golden light. Guard towers stood discreetly at the corners. Men in dark suits stationed like statues, their eyes sharp and watchful. Isabella's throat tightened. This wasn't just wealth. It was power, control, a fortress. The car stopped at the entrance, and one of Adrian's men opened the door. Adrian stepped out first, then turned and extended his hand to her. "Don't be afraid," he said softly, though his eyes gleamed with something far more dangerous than reassurance. Her hand trembled as she placed it in his. His grip was warm, steady, yet unyielding. Inside, the mansion was a palace. Crystal chandeliers bathed the marble floors in golden light. Art lined the walls, bold, dramatic paintings that told stories of struggle, conquest, and victory. Isabella's breath caught. This place, Adrian's lips curved. It's more than a home. It's an empire. As they walked deeper, men in tailored suits nodded respectfully at Adrian, stepping aside. Their eyes lingered on her, some curious, others questioning. Isabella could feel their silent judgment. Who is she to walk beside him? Adrian ignored them, guiding her into a grand dining hall. A long table stretched across the room, filled with platters of food and gleaming wine glasses. At the head of the table sat an older man with silver hair and piercing eyes. His presence was colder, sharper, like a blade compared to Adrian's fire. "Isabella," Adrian said, his hand pressing lightly against the small of her back. "This is Don Marco, my uncle, the man who built much of what you see." Her chest tightened. "Don. Mafia. Don. Don." Marco's gaze swept over her, unreadable. Then he leaned back in his chair. "So, this is the woman who has my nephew distracted." Isabella flushed under the weight of his stare. I didn't mean..." Adrian cut her off smoothly, his voice firm. "She's with me. That's all that matters." The air thickened. Isabella could feel the unspoken tension between the 2 men, as if her presence had ignited something dangerous. Don Marco's lips curved faintly. "Careful, Adrian. Attachments can make men weak, especially in our world." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Or they can make us stronger, Lance." Then, with a dismissive wave, Don Marco rose and left the hall, his men following like shadows. Isabella exhaled shakily. "He doesn't like me." Adrian turned to her, his hand cupping her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. His eyes burned with intensity. "He doesn't have to. Because you're mine, Bella, and no one, not even him, will take you away from me." Her heart pounded, caught between fear and a pull she couldn't resist. For the first time, she truly understood. Adrian's world wasn't just dangerous. It was lethal, and now she was in the very heart of it. The car glided silently past the tall, wrought iron gates. They opened without a word, as though the city itself obeyed Adrian Moretti's command. Isabella leaned against the cool leather seat, her stomach twisting into knots. She had imagined what his home might look like. She had pictured luxury, sleek, modern, intimidating, but nothing prepared her for this. The mansion stood like a crown jewel at the end of the winding drive. Massive columns framed its entrance, their white stone glowing under the wash of golden lights. Windows stretched tall and wide, glowing with warmth that felt deceptive, like a predator's gaze pretending to be kind. Your world is... She faltered, words catching in her throat. Enormous. Adrian smirked faintly, his eyes never leaving her face. It's not the size of the walls, Bella. It's what they protect. The car stopped, and in one smooth motion he stepped out and circled around to open her door. He extended his hand, palm up, patient yet commanding. His eyes said what his lips did not. Refuse me, and you'll regret it. Isabella slid her trembling hand into his. The moment their skin touched, the electricity was back. That sharp, unexplainable spark that both frightened and thrilled her. Inside, the mansion stretched like a kingdom. Crystal chandeliers glittered above marble floors polished to perfection. Every corner of the grand entryway was dressed in opulence. Velvet drapes, towering vases filled with fresh roses, portraits of men in sharp suits and colder expressions. She realized with a shiver that they were Moretti's. Adrian's bloodline, his legacy. She whispered almost to herself. This doesn't feel like a home. Adrian tilted his head, lips curving. It's not meant to. This is a fortress, Bella. My enemies can't touch me here, and now they can't touch you either. The words struck her, both comfort and cage. Men in tailored black suits moved quietly along the halls, nodding at Adrian with unspoken reverence. But their eyes lingered on Isabella, assessing her with curiosity, suspicion. She felt like prey on display, the outsider who didn't belong. Her steps faltered when Adrian led her into a grand dining hall. The ceiling soared above her, painted with elaborate frescoes of gods and battles. A long table stretched across the room, glittering with silver platters of food and crystal goblets filled with dark red wine. At the head of the table sat a man whose presence made Isabella's blood run cold. His hair was silver, his face carved with age and authority, his eyes as sharp as knives. Adrian's grip on her waist tightened. Isabella, meet Don Marco. The man leaned back in his chair, studying her with the detached gaze of a hunter examining new prey. His voice was low, steady, yet dripping with menace. So, this is the woman who has my nephew stumbling like a boy chasing shadows. Isabella stiffened, her lips parting to defend herself, but Adrian cut in sharply. She's with me. That's all that matters. Don Marco's lips twisted into something between a smile and a sneer. Careful, Adrian. Women are dangerous. They make men reckless. And in our world, his voice dropped into a growl. Recklessness gets men killed. The silence that followed pressed against Isabella's chest like a weight. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but she dared not speak. Adrian's jaw flexed, his eyes locked on his uncle, or they make men unstoppable. The two men stared at each other, a silent battle raging in the space between them. Finally, Don Marco pushed back his chair, the scrape of wood against marble sharp as a blade. He rose, brushing past Isabella without a second glance. We will see, ragazzo. Time reveals everything. His men followed him like shadows, leaving the hall in a suffocating silence. Isabella exhaled, her chest aching. He doesn't trust me. Adrian turned to her, one hand rising to cradle her chin. His touch was firm, almost possessive. His eyes burned with fire, his voice low and certain. He doesn't have to trust you, because you're mine, Isabella, and once I claim something, no one, not even him, can take it from me. Her breath caught, trapped in his intensity. For the first time, the truth hit her in full. She hadn't just stepped into Adrian's world. She had stepped into his cage, and cages, no matter how gilded, were still prisons. The hall beyond the dining room pulsed with low music, laughter, and the clink of crystal glasses. Isabella hesitated at the threshold, clutching the folds of her dress, but Adrian's hand pressed gently against her back, urging her forward. Relax, he murmured, his lips brushing against her ear. They won't bite. Not unless I tell them to. The word sent a shiver down her spine. The room was alive with power. Men in dark suits leaned against marble pillars, sipping expensive wine. Women in glittering gowns whispered behind jeweled hands, their eyes darting to Isabella with sharp curiosity. Every head turned when Adrian entered. Conversations hushed, replaced by respectful nods. The weight of his authority filled the room like smoke. Adrian didn't acknowledge them at first. His gaze remained on Isabella, as though she was the only person who mattered. Then, with a deliberate slowness, he reached for her hand. "Dance with me." She blinked. "What?" His smirk was devilish. "Dance? Or do you think I invited you here just to watch?" Before she could protest, he pulled her onto the marble floor. The music shifted, smooth and sultry, as though it bent to his will. His hand found her waist, firm and unyielding, guiding her with effortless control. Her body tensed, but his voice was low, coaxing. "Look at me, Bella." Only me, their eyes locked. She wanted to hate him for his arrogance, for dragging her into a world that wasn't hers. But every step, every brush of his hand against her body unraveled her defenses. Around them, whispers stirred. She caught fragments. "Who is she?" "Moretti never dances." "She won't last." Her cheeks burned, but Adrian spun her, pulling her close again until her chest brushed his. His breath was warm against her cheek. "Do you hear them?" he whispered. "They don't matter. What matters is this. Us." She swallowed hard, her pulse racing. "Adrian, this isn't me. I don't belong here." His grip tightened, forcing her to look at him. His eyes burned with something fierce, something possessive. "You belong wherever I decide you belong. And right now, that's in my arms." The music swelled. He dipped her low, his face inches from hers, his lips hovering as if he might claim her in front of everyone. The room seemed to hold its breath. But instead, he whispered against her lips. "Don't forget, Bella, you kissed me first, and I never let go of what's mine." When he pulled her upright, applause rippled through the room, some polite, some mocking. Isabella's cheeks flushed, her body trembling, not from the dance, but from the realization. This wasn't a dance. It was a declaration. Adrian Moretti had just shown his world that she was his, and there was no turning back. The double doors to the great hall opened, and Isabella felt her breath catch in her throat. It wasn't just a room. It was a stage. Gold chandeliers hung like captured stars, their light spilling across polished marble. A string quartet played in the corner, their music smooth and seductive. Laughter mingled with the sound of clinking crystal, but the moment Adrian stepped inside, all noise dipped into a hush. Isabella clutched her hands together, her pulse racing. Dozens of eyes turned to them. She wasn't dressed for this world. Her simple dress felt like a poor disguise in a room filled with satin, diamonds, and power. But Adrian? He belonged here. He commanded the space without effort. His every step was slow, deliberate. A predator who knew he was king. She whispered nervously, "I don't think I should be here." He glanced at her, amusement flickering in his dark eyes. "That's exactly why you should be." Before she could protest, his hand slid around her waist. His fingers pressed lightly against her hip, pulling her toward the open space at the center of the room. "Adrian," she hissed under her breath. "Everyone's watching." "Good," he said simply, his lips curling in a dangerous smile. "Let them." The music shifted. A sultry tango began, its rhythm sharp and intoxicating. Adrian took her hand and spun her into his arms. Gasps rippled across the hall. Because everyone knew one thing. Adrian Moretti never danced. His grip was firm, unyielding, guiding her across the marble floor as though she had always belonged in his arms. Isabella tried to keep up, stumbling at first, but his voice was low, coaxing, pulling her into his rhythm. "Don't fight me, Bella. Just follow," her heartbeat thundered. She hated that she could feel the heat of him, the strength in every movement, the way her body seemed to mold against his despite her resistance. Whispers floated around the room. "Who is she? He's never brought anyone here before." "She'll ruin him. Watch." The words stung, but Adrian spun her sharply, forcing her eyes back to his. His voice was soft but commanding. Do you hear them? Their doubt, their jealousy? Ignore it. There's only me. Always me. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as he pulled her close again. His scent, leather, smoke, something dark and intoxicating, filled her senses. Adrian, she whispered, you're putting a target on my back. His eyes glinted. No, I'm putting a shield, because now everyone in this room knows. You're untouchable. The music built to its peak. He dipped her low, his face hovering above hers, lips just a breath away. Her body trembled as the room seemed to freeze around them. The audience held its breath, waiting, but instead of kissing her, he whispered against her lips, his words hotter than fire. You kissed me first, Bella. And I told you, I never give back what's mine. He pulled her upright just as the music ended. Applause erupted, some polite, others grudging, but no one could deny it. The statement had been made. Adrian Moretti had danced. And he had danced with her. As he led her off the floor, Isabella's knees were weak, her heart pounding with fear and forbidden desire. She knew then, with bone-deep certainty, this wasn't just a dance. It was a declaration, and declarations in the Mafia world were dangerous things. The applause faded into murmurs as Adrian guided Isabella off the dance floor. His hand never left her waist, his touch steady, possessive, a silent warning to anyone who dared to come too close. But the moment they left the center of the room, the whispers began to grow louder. Isabella felt them slithering through the crowd, curling around her like smoke. She's nothing special. He's blinded. Every empire falls because of a woman. Her throat tightened. She wasn't supposed to hear, but she did, and each word was a blade against her already trembling heart. Adrian noticed her unease. He leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. Ignore them, Bella. Their whispers mean nothing. But she wasn't so sure. Across the room, in the shadow of a marble column, two men spoke in hushed tones. Both wore sharp suits, both loyal to Don Marco, and neither looked pleased. One narrowed his eyes, watching Isabella. He's careless, bringing her here, parading her in front of everyone. The Don won't like it, the other smirked. It's worse than careless. It's weakness, and weakness is how empires crumble. Their glasses clinked together softly, as though sealing a pact. Isabella caught the sharp glint in their eyes, and a chill raced down her spine. She turned to Adrian, panic flickering in her gaze. Adrian, they're looking at me like you're mine, he finished, his jaw tightening. And that terrifies them. He pressed a glass of wine into her hand, but his eyes never left the men in the corner. His smile was calm, but his voice was edged with steel. Do you want to know a secret, Bella? She looked at him, uncertain. He leaned closer, his words low, meant for her alone. The most dangerous thing in this room isn't their hate. It's their fear, because they know you've already become my weakness. And in this world, weaknesses are either destroyed. He paused, brushing his thumb across her knuckles, or turned into weapons. Her chest tightened, fear mixing with something darker, sharper. And which am I? She whispered. Adrian's eyes burned as he met her gaze. That's what we'll find out. In the shadows, the plotting men slipped away quietly, their voices fading into the night, but Isabella knew what they were doing. They weren't just whispering. They were planning, and she had become the spark for a fire she couldn't control. The night air outside the ballroom was crisp, heavy with the faint scent of cigar smoke and gasoline. Isabella wrapped Adrian's coat tighter around her shoulders as he escorted her toward the waiting car. For the first time since the dance, she felt her breath return to her chest. But the uneasy whispers she'd overheard wouldn't leave her. As Adrian opened the door for her, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A message. His jaw tightened. He tucked the phone away, his calm facade cracking for only a heartbeat. What is it? Isabella asked softly. Nothing you need to worry about, Adrian said. But his voice was clipped, his tone sharper than usual. He slid into the car beside her, giving a quick signal to his driver. The vehicle pulled away, gliding through the city streets lit by neon and moonlight. But the illusion of calm shattered when the car slowed at a deserted intersection. Adrian frowned. Why are we stopping? The driver's voice was strained. Sir, look ahead. A black SUV blocked the road. Its windows were tinted, its engine rumbling low, menacing. Adrian's hand immediately went to his holster. Stay down, Bella. The SUV door swung open, and 3 men stepped out. All wore dark suits. One of them carried something in his hand. A crumpled bouquet of roses. He tossed it onto the hood of Adrian's car. The petals scattered like drops of blood. Isabella's heart hammered. What does that mean? Adrian's eyes narrowed. It's a warning. The man in front smirked, lifting a hand as though tipping an invisible hat. His voice carried easily across the empty street. Walk away, Adrian, before your little distraction cost you everything. The other 2 men laughed, their laughter echoing like knives in the silence. Adrian shoved his door open, stepping out with a deadly calm. The night seemed to hold its breath. Isabella wanted to scream, to beg him not to go, but her voice caught in her throat. Adrian stood tall, his gun drawn but pointed low. You think leaving flowers makes you brave? His voice was a growl, controlled fury. Touch her, and I won't leave flowers. I'll leave graves. The men's smiles faltered, but only for a second. They backed into their SUV, slamming the door shut before peeling off into the night. Silence swallowed the street once more, leaving only the scattered roses in their wake. Adrian exhaled slowly, returning to the car. He slid in beside Isabella, his hand brushing hers. This is what I didn't want you to see, he admitted, his voice low. My world isn't just money and power, Bella. It's warnings, threats, blood. Her hands trembled in her lap. She wanted to tell him she was strong enough, that she could handle it. But the truth was written in her eyes. Fear. Adrian cupped her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. You can still walk away, but if you stay, understand this. They'll try to hurt you, to get to me, and I won't always be able to shield you from what's coming. For the first time, Isabella saw the cracks in his armor. He wasn't just a mafia boss. He was a man in love, and that made him vulnerable. And in the shadows of the city, someone had just made their move. The ride back to Adrian's penthouse was silent, save for the hum of the engine and Isabella's heartbeat pounding in her ears. The bouquet of roses, the mocking voices, they replayed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. When the car finally stopped, Adrian reached for her hand, but she pulled back slightly, her chest tightening. He studied her face, his eyes shadowed with regret. Say it, he murmured. Whatever's clawing at you, say it. Her throat felt dry, but she forced the words out. Adrian, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about survival. Those men tonight, they weren't warning you. They were warning me. He exhaled slowly, resting his elbows on his knees. I know, her voice trembled. Then what am I supposed to do? Pretend I'm not terrified every time someone looks at me? Pretend that I don't feel like I've been marked? His gaze hardened, though the pain in his eyes betrayed him. You have been marked, because you're mine, and in this world that comes with a price. She stared at him, stunned by the bluntness of his words. A price? She whispered. Adrian turned toward her, his voice rough, almost breaking. Yes, you can leave now, Bella. I won't stop you. You can go back to your quiet life, your safety, your freedom. His hand hovered near hers, aching to touch her but holding back. Or you can stay. Stay and accept that every danger they send at me, they'll send at you too. The room fell into a heavy silence. The city lights glittered beyond the glass windows, indifferent to the war raging inside her. Isabella's chest ached with conflict. She thought of her past heartbreaks, her ex who had left her feeling small and unworthy. Adrian wasn't like him. Adrian made her feel seen, wanted, alive, but also terrified. Adrian, she whispered, her voice trembling. You don't understand. It's not the danger that scares me most. His brows furrowed. Then what does? Her eyes burned with unshed tears. It's losing you. It's knowing that one day they might take you from me, and I'll never survive it. Something in Adrian broke then. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though letting go would mean death itself. His voice shook against her hair. They'll have to kill me before I let them touch you. I swear it. For a moment, time stopped. The world outside, the threats, the whispers, they all faded, leaving only the two of them, bound by something neither could deny. But Isabella knew the truth. Love wasn't free. And in Adrian's world, the price of love was always paid in blood. Adrian's penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. The city lights outside cast fractured beams across the marble floors. But even their glow felt cold tonight. Isabella paced near the wide windows, arms wrapped around herself, while Adrian sat in the leather chair, elbows on his knees, watching her every move. Finally, she turned on him, her eyes blazing. "Why didn't you tell me this was what your life was really like?" He didn't flinch. "Would you have stayed if I had?" Her lips parted, but no words came. That silence, her silence, seemed to cut him deeper than any bullet ever had. "Bella," he said, softer now, rising to his feet. "When I met you, when you kissed me that night, I wasn't thinking about power or enemies or blood. I was thinking about how, for the first time in years, I felt something real." Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of those roses still haunted her. "And now? What am I supposed to do with this, with us? Am I supposed to ignore the fact that someone out there already wants me gone? That I'm just leverage?" Adrian closed the distance between them in 3 deliberate steps. His hand hovered at her cheek, not quite touching, as though he feared she might shatter under his touch. "You're not leverage," he said firmly. "You're not a pawn. You're the one thing in my life that isn't part of a deal, or a threat, or a game." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away, shaking her head. "You say that, Adrian, but to them, to your enemies, I'm just the easiest way to break you. And I can't stop asking myself, how long before they try again? How long before roses turn into bullets?" His jaw flexed, his eyes darkening. "Then let them try," he growled. "They'll find out what happens when you threaten what's mine." Her breath hitched. His possessiveness frightened her, yet it also steadied her, like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing someone was holding her hand tight enough to never let her fall. "Adrian," she whispered, voice trembling, "you're asking me to give up the life I know. To give up safety, to give up peace, and I'll give you something in return," he said, his voice breaking through the cracks of his armor. "A life where you'll never be invisible again, where you'll never wonder if you're loved, because I'll spend every breath proving it." Her eyes closed, tears finally slipping free. She didn't know if she was strong enough for this world, but she knew she couldn't bear to walk away from him either. When she opened her eyes, Adrian was still watching her, searching her face for an answer. She stepped closer, her hands trembling as they touched his chest. "Then I'll stay," she whispered, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "But don't lie to me again. Don't hide things from me, Adrian. If I'm paying this price, I deserve the truth." His eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. He pressed his forehead against hers, his breath warm as he murmured, "Then you'll have it. All of it. Even the parts that will hurt to hear." And as his arms wrapped around her, Isabella realized she had crossed a line. There was no going back. The price of love had been set, and she had just agreed to pay it. For 2 days, life settled into a fragile rhythm. Adrian kept Isabella close, always within reach, never more than a glance away. His men shadowed her every step, their presence a constant reminder of the danger circling them. But danger doesn't announce itself. It waits, and then it strikes. That night, Isabella sat in Adrian's study, flipping through a book she couldn't focus on. The clock ticked steadily, but each passing minute only wound her tighter. Adrian had stepped out to handle a meeting downstairs, promising to return quickly. She told herself it was fine. She was safe here, until the phone rang. It wasn't Adrian's phone. It was the landline, the one she'd never heard ring before. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello?" A man's voice rasped through the line, low and mocking. Bella, you answer like a good little wife already." Her stomach dropped. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled darkly. "You don't need to know who I am. You only need to know this. You should have walked away. Now, you'll pay the price for staying." Her hand trembled as she gripped the receiver. "If you touch him— Oh, no. Tonight isn't about Adrian. Tonight is about you. We want him to feel what it's like to lose the thing he can't protect." The line went dead. Isabella froze. And then, the lights flickered. A shadow shifted near the balcony doors. Before she could scream, the glass shattered inward, and 2 masked men stormed inside. Run! Her mind screamed, but her body locked in terror. One of the men grabbed her wrist. She fought, kicking, clawing, but he was too strong. The other hissed, "Hurry, before he comes back." But Adrian did come back. The door slammed open, and there he was, gun drawn, eyes blazing with a fury that could set the world on fire. "Let her go." His voice was a death sentence. The men faltered, but one pressed a knife to Isabella's throat, dragging her against his chest. "Step closer and she bleeds." Isabella's pulse thundered. Adrian's eyes never left hers. He saw her fear, her trembling, and something in him broke. "Do you know what happens?" Adrian said, his voice low, lethal. "To men who touch what's mine." The men laughed nervously, trying to sound braver than they were. "Even you can't stop all of us, boss. You'll have to choose, her safety or your pride." Isabella gasped as the blade pressed closer to her skin. Tears blurred her vision. For one terrifying second, she thought Adrian might hesitate, but he didn't. He fired. The shot was so precise, so ruthless, it tore the knife clean from the man's hand without touching Isabella. She fell forward and Adrian caught her, pulling her behind him in one swift motion. The other man lunged, but Adrian's second shot dropped him to the floor. Silence. Isabella clung to Adrian, her body trembling violently. His hands cradled her face, his lips pressing to her forehead as he whispered, "I told you, Bella, they'd have to kill me first." But as he held her, her tears soaking into his shirt, both of them knew the truth. This was only the beginning. His enemies weren't just warning him anymore. They were declaring war. The phone call still rang in Isabella's ears long after the line went dead. That mocking voice, the way he said her name like it was already carved on a tombstone. It gnawed at her chest, refusing to let go. Her palms were slick with sweat. She set the receiver back down, trying to calm her racing heartbeat. "It's just a threat," she told herself. "They can't get inside. Adrian's men are everywhere." But the thought was barely complete when the lights flickered. Her body froze. Every hair on her arm stood on end. She turned slowly toward the balcony doors, and her breath caught in her throat. 2 shadows loomed against the glass. Then, crash. The doors exploded inward, shards scattering like ice across the floor. "Don't scream," one of the masked men growled, lunging forward. His grip closed around her wrist like iron. Isabella thrashed, desperation giving her strength. She kicked, clawed, even bit at the hand dragging her. "Let me go." "Quiet!" the second man snarled, pulling a knife from his belt. Its blade caught the city lights, gleaming with cold promise. Fear clawed up her throat, choking her. This wasn't a warning. This was real. They had come for her. She struggled harder, her voice breaking. "Adrian! Adrian!" Her cry was answered. The door slammed open. Adrian strode in like a storm-given flesh, his gun already raised, his eyes burning with a darkness that could swallow men whole. The energy in the room shifted instantly. The intruders hesitated, their bravado faltering. Let her go. His voice was ice, sharp enough to cut through bone. One man dragged Isabella tighter against him, pressing the knife to her throat. She gasped, her pulse hammering against the cold steel. "Step closer and she dies." Adrian's jaw clenched. He lifted his gun higher, steady as stone. His voice dropped to a growl. "Do you know what happens to men who threaten what's mine?" The knife pressed harder. Isabella whimpered, her eyes locked on Adrian's. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. "You think you can scare me with a blade?" Adrian's tone was almost calm, terrifyingly calm. "I've buried men for less." The intruders exchanged uneasy glances, but one tried to sneer. "Even you can't stop us both. You'll have to choose, boss. Her safety or your pride." Adrian's lips curled into the faintest, deadliest smile. "Wrong, I never choose." And then, bang, the shot shattered the knife from the man's grip, sparks flying as it clattered to the marble floor. Isabella stumbled forward, and Adrian was already there, pulling her into his chest with one arm, shielding her with his body. The second man lunged, roaring with panic. Adrian didn't hesitate. Another shot rang out, dropping him instantly. The thud of his body echoed in the silence that followed. The first man scrambled toward the balcony, clutching his bleeding hand. But Adrian's voice stopped him cold. "Run, and I'll let you live. Stay, and I'll make sure your boss never recognizes your face again." The man fled into the night, disappearing into the city shadows. Adrian holstered his weapon and turned back to Isabella. She was trembling so violently she could barely stand, her breath coming in ragged gasps. He cupped her face with both hands, pressing his lips to her forehead, grounding her. "Bella, look at me. You're safe. I've got you." His voice broke, raw with emotion he rarely showed anyone. Her tears spilled freely now, soaking his shirt as she clung to him. "They were going to kill me. Adrian, I know," he whispered, holding her tighter. "And I swear on everything I am they'll regret it." He rocked her gently, but his eyes were already burning with vengeance, staring past her into the night. Because tonight wasn't just an attack. It was a message. And Adrian DeLuca never ignored a message. The penthouse smelled of smoke and shattered glass, the air still trembling with the echo of gunfire. Adrian hadn't let go of Isabella, not for a second. He sat with her on the edge of the leather couch, his arm wrapped around her shoulders as if his grip alone could shield her from every bullet, every knife, every monster in the dark. But his eyes weren't on her anymore. They were fixed on the city skyline, cold and distant, calculating. Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. "They came for me, Adrian. Not you. Me." He turned to her then, and the rage in his expression softened into something that stole her breath. "No, Bella. They came for me. You were just the message." Her chest tightened. "And what happens now?" He stood, his figure framed by the window, a silhouette of power and fury. His hand slid into his jacket, pulling out his phone. "Now?" His voice was steel. "Now blood answers blood." He dialed a number, speaking in Italian so sharp and clipped that Isabella couldn't catch all the words. But she didn't need to. The venom in his tone told her everything. Orders were being given. Retribution was being set in motion. When he hung up, he turned back to her, kneeling at her side. For a rare moment his armor cracked. She saw the man behind the Mafia boss, a man who looked at her like she was both salvation and doom. "Bella," he whispered, taking her trembling hands in his. "I swore I'd never let this life touch someone I loved again. But tonight they crossed a line. And I can't protect you from the storm that's coming unless you're with me. Fully, completely. No secrets, no lies." Her heart lurched at the word he'd spoken so effortlessly. Loved. "Adrian." Her voice shook. "What are you saying?" He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. Reverent, almost worshipful. "I'm saying this is your last chance to walk away, because once I strike back, there's no return. You'll be marked as mine in every eye, every whisper, and that means they'll never stop hunting you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "And if I stay?" Adrian's gaze burned into hers. "Then I make you a vow, a blood oath." His voice was low, dangerous, sacred. "Anyone who tries to touch you, to use you, to break you, I will destroy them. I don't care if it means burning every enemy family to ash. I'll cover this city in graves before I let them take you from me." The words should have terrified her. Maybe they did, but beneath the fear was something else, something undeniable. He wasn't just claiming her. He was binding himself to her, staking his empire, his soul, on her survival. Isabella's breath trembled as she whispered, "Then I stay." Adrian closed his eyes, a shudder running through him. When he opened them again, his lips curved into something between a vow and a threat. He drew a knife from his belt, pricked his finger, and pressed it gently to her hand. A drop of his blood smeared against her skin. "Now you carry me," he said. "And I carry you." For the first time, Isabella felt it, the weight of his world settling on her shoulders, heavy and unrelenting. She wasn't just Adrian's weakness anymore. She was part of his war, and tonight, war had already begun. The room was still buzzing with chaos, broken glass crunching under Adrian's polished shoes, the metallic tang of blood mixing with the faint smoke curling from a shattered lamp. The penthouse no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like the aftermath of a battlefield. Adrian hadn't moved from Isabella's side. His arm locked around her waist, fingers spread protectively over her trembling frame, as if anchoring her to the world. He could feel her rapid heartbeat thundering against his chest. For a man who thrived in war, hearing her fear nearly broke him. Isabella stared at the door where masked men had fled minutes earlier. "They knew my name." Her voice cracked, raw with dread. "They weren't just after you, Adrian. They wanted me." His jaw tightened, every muscle in his face cut from marble. "No," he growled, though his tone carried sorrow under the fury. "They wanted to hurt me. You were just the knife they chose." Isabella's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling as she clutched the fabric of his shirt. "Then maybe I should go. Maybe if I leave, they'll stop coming." "Don't." The word ripped out of him, sharp and commanding. His grip on her shoulders firmed, his dark eyes blazing as they locked onto hers. "Don't ever say that again." The silence between them stretched, thick, suffocating, until Adrian pulled away just enough to stand. He walked to the massive window overlooking the city, a kingdom of lights beneath the night sky. The reflection of his silhouette looked like a shadow carved from violence and grief. He took out his phone, his voice switching to Italian, low and lethal as he barked commands. Isabella didn't understand the words, but the venom in his tone made her shiver. When the call ended, Adrian let the phone drop on the table with a thud. Then, slowly, he turned back to her. His anger hadn't cooled. It had crystallized into something even more dangerous: determination. Kneeling in front of her, he reached for her hands. His voice softened, trembling with something she wasn't used to hearing from him: vulnerability. "Isabella, I've spent my life making sure the blood I spill never touched someone innocent. But tonight they didn't just cross a line, they destroyed it." Her lips parted. "What does that mean?" Adrian's thumb brushed against her cheek, tender despite the storm in his eyes. "It means there's no going back. Not for me. Not for you. They've marked you, Bella. And now the only way to protect you is to make sure every enemy fears what it means to touch you." She felt her pulse race at the gravity in his words. "You're talking about war." His lips curved into something grim, a vow carved in fire. "No, amore. I'm talking about obliteration." Adrian drew the dagger from his belt, the silver blade gleaming under the fractured light. He pricked his fingertip, a droplet of crimson swelling before he pressed it gently onto her hand. "Blood answers blood," he said, his tone hushed, reverent, terrifying. "And this is my oath. I'll bury every man who dares whisper your name with malice. I'll burn down empires before I let them take you from me." Her breath caught. She should have been horrified. A man vowing to cover the city in graves should have chilled her to her bones. But instead her heart ached with something dangerous. She believed him. And more terrifying than that, she wanted to belong to him. "Adrian," she whispered, tears slipping free. "If I stay, there's no undoing it, is there?" He shook his head slowly, his voice quiet. "No, Bella. Stay, and the world will see you as mine. They'll come for you harder than ever, but I swear, I'll meet every bullet with blood, every threat with fire. You won't be alone. Not for a second." Her hands trembled as she lifted them to his face, cupping his jaw. His breath stilled. "Then I stay," she whispered. For the briefest moment, his mask broke. A man who had built his life on violence looked undone by a single choice. Her choice. His forehead pressed against hers, his bloodied hand still on hers, binding them in a silent vow. "You don't know what you've done," he murmured, his voice both reverent and haunted, "but you'll never regret it." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, echoing like cannons announcing the war to come. And in that shadowed room, Isabella understood. She wasn't just Adrian's weakness anymore. She was his blood oath, his reason, his war. The storm broke at midnight. Isabella stood at the tall windows of Adrian's penthouse, the city lights swallowed by sheets of rain. Every flash of lightning illuminated the hard lines of Adrian's face as he strapped on his holster, loaded his weapon, and slid knives into hidden sheaths. He wasn't dressing for a meeting. He was dressing for war. She finally spoke, her voice tight. "You don't have to do this tonight." Adrian didn't pause, didn't even look up. Yes, I do. His tone wasn't anger. It was finality. A man whose decision had already been carved in stone. When he finally turned to her, his black shirt clung to his chest, raincoat slung over his arm, his jaw shadowed by stubble. His eyes burned with a fire that made her throat dry. You made your choice, Isabella. You stayed, which means every man who breathes your name in hate dies tonight. Her breath caught. She wasn't sure if she should beg him to stay, or beg him to take her with him. Adrian, please. He silenced her with a rough but tender hand against her cheek. Don't ask me to stay, Bella. The only way to keep you safe is to end this, for good. Before she could respond, headlights cut across the rain outside. Black SUVs lined the street below like soldiers waiting for their general. His men were here. Adrian kissed her hard, fierce, as if the world could end in that single breath. Then he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him, leaving her in silence, except for the hammer of her own heartbeat. The warehouse reeked of gasoline and steel when Adrian's convoy pulled in. His men moved like shadows, weapons gleaming, and at the far end, under flickering lights, stood the enemy, rival soldiers, faces half hidden, guns raised. Adrian stepped forward alone. The storm outside roared like an omen, thunder shaking the walls. Where is your boss? Adrian's voice echoed like a death knell. A man sneered. You came alone, Moretti? Brave or stupid? Adrian smirked coldly, pulling back his coat to reveal his weapon. Neither. I came to collect. The air exploded with gunfire. Bullets ripped through the warehouse, sparks flying off metal beams. Adrian moved like a predator, silent, precise, merciless. Every shot he fired found its mark. Every man that lunged at him fell, crimson staining the concrete. His men pushed forward, covering him, but it was clear Adrian wasn't hiding behind anyone. He was leading, killing, avenging. At one point, a rival soldier tried to sneak behind him. Adrian caught him, slammed him into a pillar, and whispered something in Italian before pulling the trigger. The echo bounced like a warning shot through hell itself. Minutes stretched like hours. By the time silence fell, bodies littered the ground. Smoke curled from broken lamps, and Adrian stood in the center, breathing hard, his shirt stained with blood not his own. The rival boss, crawling and bleeding from a wound in his leg, spat curses at him. You think this ends it, Moretti? You think she'll ever be safe? Adrian's eyes narrowed into steel. He crouched low, voice soft, lethal. The moment they touched her name, they signed their death warrants. And if anyone else dares... He pressed his gun to the man's chest. I'll make the devil look merciful. The shot rang out, final. Back at the penthouse, Isabella waited. Every minute felt like an eternity. Rain hammered the glass, her hands twisting together until her knuckles went white. Then, the door opened. Adrian stood there, soaked, blood-stained, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. But his eyes softened the moment they found her. She rushed to him, trembling, searching for wounds. You're bleeding. It's not mine, he murmured, pulling her against him. His voice was ragged, but there was relief laced in it too. It's over, Bella. No one will touch you again. Her tears came fast, hot against his chest. She didn't know whether to be horrified or grateful. Maybe both. But as his arms wrapped tighter around her, shielding her from the storm outside, one truth carved itself into her heart. Adrian Moretti wasn't just a Mafia boss. He was her protector, her damnation, her salvation. And for the first time, Isabella realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She belonged to him, forever. The storm had passed by dawn. Sunlight pushed weakly through the curtains of the penthouse, painting the marble floors with pale gold. The city, bruised and battered by the night's violence, seemed quieter than usual, as if it too was holding its breath. Isabella woke to the weight of an arm around her waist. For a moment she almost forgot. The blood, the gunfire, the vow. Then she turned, and there he was, Adrian Moretti. Even asleep, he looked carved from stone, his jaw clenched, his chest rising and falling slowly, the faint smell of smoke and gunpowder still clinging to his skin. She reached out, fingers brushing against the faint scar on his shoulder, a reminder of the man he truly was. A warrior, a sinner, a man soaked in blood, and yet... The warmth in his embrace was the only place she had ever felt safe. Her whisper broke the silence. "What have I done?" Adrian stirred, eyes opening slowly. Dark, heavy, but soft when they landed on her. "You stayed," he murmured. His voice was hoarse, roughened by smoke and sleeplessness. "That's what you've done." Her chest tightened. "And because of me, you killed for me. You burned for me." He leaned up on one elbow, his hand finding her face, thumb brushing the tears she didn't realize had fallen. "No, Isabella. I killed because they dared to touch what's mine. I burned because it's the only language this world understands." She swallowed hard, searching his face. "And what am I now, Adrian?" "To the world. To your enemies?" His answer was quiet, but it cut deeper than a blade. "You're my weakness, my weapon, my reason, my damnation." Her lips parted, trembling with fear and longing. "And to you?" For the first time, Adrian's mask cracked. Not with anger, but with raw, naked truth. His forehead pressed against hers, his voice breaking into something almost broken. "To me, you're everything." The words landed like an oath heavier than bullets. Isabella felt the air leave her lungs, her heart racing in surrender and terror alike. She kissed him then, not out of impulse, not out of fear, but out of something far more dangerous. Acceptance. When they pulled apart, Adrian's gaze burned with fire again, but this time it wasn't directed at his enemies. It was for her, all for her. He whispered against her lips, "The war isn't over, Bella. It never is, but from now on, you fight it with me." And in that moment, Isabella understood the price of loving a mafia boss. It wasn't just danger. It wasn't just blood. It was forever. As the city stirred awake below them, and Adrian's phone buzzed with new threats waiting outside their fragile cocoon, Isabella didn't flinch. She stayed in his arms, because she knew the truth now. She hadn't just kissed a stranger that night to make her ex jealous. She had awakened a beast, and now she belonged to him, in love, in blood, in war, forever. Thank you for listening to this story of love and danger, where one kiss changed everything. But remember, this is only the beginning. Every love story hides a secret. Every romance carries a risk. And every heartbeat can lead to betrayal or forever. If you don't want to miss the next tale of passion, obsession, and forbidden desire, make sure you subscribe now. Stay with me, and together we'll step into the next chapter, where love burns hotter, the danger grows darker, and every choice comes with a price.